Well, welcome to another edition of the Johnny Torch Live program. Here with your host, Johnny Torch, our number 229th broadcast. That's 229 broadcasts to bring you this special day, our 10th anniversary show, 10 big years in Bullets Bourbon Comics. There we go, a little New Year's Eve early. But I've been waiting to do this show for quite a while. We're going to formally introduce our latest issue. But we're also going to look back today. We're going to look back at the beginning throughout the entire series of Bullets Bourbon Comics. We've been doing it for 10 years now. Can you believe that? 10 long years in the Bullets Bourbon saga. We started 2012, and here we are, 2022. Funny how that happens, huh? 10 years go by in the blink of an eye. But we welcome you to the party, and if you have any comments, let me know. Check out the links in the description. You will be able to purchase any and all the comics we're talking about this evening on a lovely December 1st, the first day of the last month of the year. And we're going to breeze through some of these over the next half hour or so, run down memory lane, if you will, on the subject that's most near and dear to my heart, Bullets Bourbon Comics. Of course, we got to start at the beginning. And of course, as I said, make sure you check out the links in the description below. You can find all the issues on my website. I don't have the most recent issue listed yet at Indie Planet, which is a source of consternation to me. But you just send me an email and we'll get that issue out to you, because we're going to talk about that. That's kind of the reason why I delayed this, is I wanted to make sure that Indie Planet was going to have it available. But unfortunately, they are slow as molasses. And I had complained already, and unfortunately to no avail, at least as of today. So you will have to hit me up in an email in order for me to get you that one personally. But all the other issues in the Bullets Bourbon saga are there for purchase. And again, of course, if you want a specialty item, if you want them autographed or something like that, you can always feel free to email me on the website, and I will endeavor to get that taken care of for you. All right, so let's start at the beginning. Our very first issue, of course, hit the stands a full 10 years ago. The metaphorical stands, I suppose. But yeah, there you are. There you have it. The first issue, It's Always Something. I remember back as an itty-bitty boy creating The Adventures of Bullets Bourbon, and I've steadfastly nurtured it. And, I didn't just come up with this in a day. This was a project that, like I said, was near and dear to me for several decades, that I worked on it, refining it, getting it done. And if I could give any kind of advice, I would say make sure you do that if you're going to do your own comic. Make sure that you've spent the time with it. Don't just slapdash and put it out there. Try to get the concept completely under your belt so that you'll know exactly where this is going, what you're trying to say with it. That's why I'm very pleased with the time I took doing this, because after a number of years, you can sense where the direction is going. You can understand the characters better, and of course motivations, and there's a lot more paths taken that way. And of course, the first issue introduces us to Bullets Bourbon, his friends, Officer Chubby O'Reilly and Sergeant Joe Thursday, who are his Confederates, his compatriots, if you will. And of course, his arch nemesis is revealed, Carrot Top, and his lacking lackey, Pickle Puss. Carrot Top's plan is to rule the world, and his first plan in this issue is to dispense a mind-altering gas, a substance that will render the populace of Stark City into mental vegetables. And it is up to Bullets Bourbon alone to stop him. Now, this was a story that was pretty simple in its conception and execution. Of course, coming up with it as a kid, as I did, it wasn't meant to be this epic multi-parter, and going back to it and trying to reintroduce it, I was tempted. I was sorely tempted to, sort of make it a multi-part epic, to make it this grandiose plan. But my philosophy, as it is when it comes to these things, is that the first issue, everybody buys the first issue. And you have to kind of make it a self-contained story. You can't just get too ambitious with it, because you're going to spend way too much time setting up things that are going to happen later, and you're going to spend a lot of time, you know, building the world, as it were. But in this issue, I had a mantra, so to speak, of keeping it simple. And I wanted to make sure that we had sort of a taster, a template for what the Bullets Bourbon universe was going to be like. That this issue would be sort of, like I said, a sampler for what to expect in issues to come. You could get a flavor for the humor, the action, adventure, the characters and their interactions. And of course, Carrot Top, one of my favorite villains. One of his key goals is to sway Bullets Bourbon to the dark side. He's not necessarily looking to eliminate Bullets Bourbon, although it could, of course, benefit him if he did. But he wants to be able to use him and his army of conquistadors, so to speak, in his bid for world domination. So that's the first issue. It's always something. And that's one of the few titles that really struck me as being the story of his life, the story of my life. It's always something. And what better way to open up the Bullets Bourbon universe? All right, so next up, we get the sequel, as it were. The second issue, Bullets Bourbon Knock on Wood. Now, this introduces the great villain Pencil Neck, another one of my favorite villains. And I don't know why that screen at the bottom there is there. I don't think that should be there, but it's okay. It's not really anything you shouldn't see. But again, this was another one of my favorite villains. Pencil Neck, of course, mad as a March hare and very unpredictable. As I always say, if Carrot Top and Pickle Puss is sort of my Lex Luthor and Otis, I think Pencil Neck is sort of my Joker, my trickster. And Bullets never really quite knows where he's coming from, because he's he's sort of he's crazy, let's put it that way. And of course, his eraser gives him great powers and abilities, which make him one of the more formidable villains that Bullets ever faces. He always has to beware of the danger. And of course, that if you've seen in the opening, that wonderful opening that we have, his eyes sort of signify when he's going to erase somebody. And I really did a good job, I think, animating that for the short, that his eyes flash when he's about to erase somebody. But again, he's mad as a March hare. It's a lot of fun to write him, because it's also probably one of the more difficult villains to write, because you have to put yourself in his place of being completely crazy and completely bizarre. And things don't quite work out the way he wants, but it sort of makes sense to him. And that's what's fun about a character like Pencil Neck. He's not methodical like Carrot Top, but he is crafty. He is clever. He kind of knows what he has to do. And as we'll see in the most recent issue, he kind of knows what buttons to push with Bullets Bourbon as well. Again, another villain, he sort of, again, I would compare him to like the Riddler, where he wants to sort of match wits with Bullets Bourbon. He doesn't necessarily want to destroy him right away. Unlike Carrot Top, I wouldn't say that he wants to keep Bullets Bourbon around, because he's too crazy to be able to work with him. But he is just insane enough to have fun trying to outwit Bullets Bourbon. And it's the great goal, I suppose, that he has, is to sort of outwit him, and to, once he beats him, finally destroy him. And that's sort of Pencil Neck's MO. In this story, Knock on Wood, Bullets Bourbon will need all the luck he can get, as Pencil Neck frames him for murder, a crime he didn't commit. And A rival private eye from Ragatown named Detective Scotch, Horatio T. Scotch, is brought in on the case, on the pencil neck case, but he's ultimately brought in to try to bring Bullets Bourbon down because Bullets, of course, with Captain Penders in charge of the Stark City Police, who harbors some kind of grudge against Bullets. It's I always say he's sort of the you know well, I guess I'd say the Mr. McGee of the show, or maybe the Colonel Decker would be a little bit more of a fair comparison, where he's not really a villain, but he's the antagonist, and he sort of runs a lot of things that cause Bullets to, you know, not make life as easy as possible for him. But we also introduce in this one another one of my favorite characters. We haven't seen him too much since this issue, but Smilin' Sam, the human discount emporium, and he becomes a valuable asset to Bullets as a information broker, so to speak. And he runs sort of a crooked wholesale emporium where he'll sell anything and anything he can at the right price. And of course, he's a fence. And once Bullets Bourbon finds that out, he manages to leverage Sam into being a worthwhile informant. And he's a lot of fun to write because he's basically obsessed. He's obsessed with selling and making money, and that's the only thing that matters to him, besides his own skin, I suppose. But Sam is a lot of fun. He wears a zoot suit. I should probably have made a picture here to show of him, and he has an unhealthy obsession with his nearest competitor, Madman Mooney. Madman Mooney, of course, we never see him. I know what he looks like, but I wonder what everybody thinks he looks like. If you know what Smilin' Sam looks like, you're probably going to be curious what Madman Mooney looks like. But we'll get there eventually, I'm sure. So Bullets is framed for a crime he didn't commit, and he faces the fearsome Pencil Neck face-to-face for the first time ever in this issue, Bullets Bourbon, Casebook 2, Knock on Wood. So you can check that one out, of course. Now, coming up, we have the finish of the trilogy, Bullets Bourbon. Now, this is our third chronicle. We've made trades out of these, so this says Casebook 6. I probably could have changed that so it would say the third chronicle, but I decided just to leave it as is, sort of like you're getting it reprinted as it was and not with any alterations, but you'll get the trades of these issues. And that was something that took a little bit of time. That's the reason why when we did the trades, we completely recolored, relettered, and minor edits to some of the problems. Maybe a misspelled word here or there. But we got the trades out, and that kind of took away from doing issues. So when we did 10 issues, it really doesn't reflect that we've had to go back and recolor and reletter some of these things. And my philosophy is, try to get it out there as soon as possible. But at the same time, as I said earlier, you want to make sure you understand your story and you understand your characters and you have your designs and art direction all down pat. But it's a learning process. You're always going to improve. So as I said, my advice is not necessarily to have to wait until you're perfect, because you're going to realize you'll never get there. So I started out 10 years ago, and the first issue was hand-colored, hand-lettered, and progressively as the series went on with the second issue, I digitally colored them. I learned these things on the job, and I don't think that's necessarily a bad thing, because I've always gotten a lot of comments, a lot of positive comments about the hand-colored issue, the first issue. So it's not necessarily a bad thing, I don't think, to start before you're ready. But at the same time, you have to be able to go back and make things sort of uniform so that it all matches up. I don't like, starting a program in black and white and then it turning color. I always feel like it should have started in color. And, of course, in the case of television, that really wasn't a possibility. But it just feels more in keeping with the universe if you can keep everything in line, in form. But talking about When the Night Comes. Now, we call this one When the Night Comes. This is the team up between Carrot Top and Pencil Neck. This is a huge story. This is 60 pages. And Carrot Top's plans for world domination, he brings in Pencil Neck because, like I said, he wants to have as many people on his team as possible that will help his cause. As you can see, Detective Scotch returns as sort of, he's sort of the pain in the neck Bullets deals with. Bullets and he have a very fun adversarial relationship. I always compare it to Hope and Crosby. That's kind of what it's based on, where they don't really hate each other, but they don't get along very well. They don't see things eye to eye because they're basically very different people. They're two very different people. I would say Scotch represents more of like a Groucho Marx. He's very acidic and with a with a fiery tongue. He he seeks to sort of do a verbal sparring match with Bullets every time he meets him, and it's very fun to write and hopefully to read. Of course, also introduced into this one is the lovely and beautiful Desiree Miller, who is the object of Bullet's affection. And she's sort of the uptown girl, you know what I mean? She's a starlet that's starting to make good and become very famous. And of course, Bullets is he's a lovelorn character. I always compare his personality in the sense as that of Charlie Brown, where he doesn't ever really get the girl. He doesn't ever really get close to getting the girl. But in this case, he finds himself working alongside what is his dream girl, and he kind of has the false hopes and aspirations that something will come of it and that it becomes a romance. Unfortunately, it doesn't work out that way for him, but he can still dream. We also introduce Sour Note into the story here. He is sort of the henchman for Carrot Top. He plays a very important part because he has diplomatic immunity. He's one of those cool characters that can be a villain and not be touched by the law. And Carrot Top makes use of that, he and Pencil Neck and Sour Note. But Sour Note really doesn't aspire to being a master villain. He fancies himself a pianist and a writer of fine opera and stuff. And his only interest is letting or trying to coerce Desiree into being the star of his latest production that he is composing. So that's where he gets brought in, and that's how she gets brought in as well. Of course, Uncle Sam, in the form of Colonel Krenna, recruits Bullets. And that's why it says secret agent there, because in this one, it's kind of a tribute to a secret agent story. Now, when I first created Bullets Bourbon, I wasn't too sure. I was thinking maybe along the lines of him being a secret agent, but I found that path to be well worn. Sort of like the superhero path. The superhero path is sort of well tread right now. And I thought the film noir, private eye genre, it afforded a lot better visuals. And it was a lot more fun to draw. A guy in a fedora and a trench coat and all that cool stuff. It was a lot better than just a guy in a tuxedo. And that, again, that was kind of well-worn material that I think everybody had already seen. But Bullets does get to do this in this episode. He gets to be a master of disguise once again, and we get to see him undercover, so to speak, in this issue. And of course, the master plan for Carrot Top in this one is he is going to create, or he has created, a Eraserhead missile, which is designed to take out the Capitol in Washington on the taking out all three branches of the government at the same time at the State of the Union address. And that is quite an ambitious plot. And of course, that's why the government seeks Bullets Bourbon to get him, who has some history with these two characters, to get him in there to foil this plot, as it were. All right, so again, check this one out. This is one of my favorite stories. I really love when you have a villain team up when you have two really great villains. And it really puts the hero, in this case, Bullets Bourbon, up against the wall, because he really is going to have to have his wits about him to take out both these guys. And then you got Sour Note on top of it all. And then, of course, you have all their flunkies, because, all good villains have to have good flunkies. He really is in a pickle in this one. Not Pickle Puss, but you know what I mean. All right, so check that one out. That is When the Night Comes, our third chronicle, which is our trade. All right, so next up, we're going to take a look at, first here, we'll play the ads for this, because I think that'll give you a little bit more of a sense of what's going on here. So we'll take a break for a second, and you'll check out these ads for our next grand project. All right, so that's some sad stuff there, as you can see. But it's still, again, another one of my favorite stories. I didn't really know how this was going to come out, because I always said this was one of my most personal stories, and I think every time an artist says that, it usually turns out to be a crappy story or song or something like that, quite honestly. But this one did turn out quite well. But I poured a lot of emotion into this one. And this one, Bullets Bourbon becomes obsessed with capturing Carrot Top. Now, as I said, the relationship between the non-relationship between he and Desiree in the last issue sort of sets him off in a very bad way. And he becomes obsessed with finding Carrot Top, finding that to be sort of his only meaning in life, as he wants to bring him to justice and finally retire and finally, put all this behind him. He doesn't want to take this kind of crap anymore. He's fed up with it. And, from the first issue on, the idea is it's always something. And he kind of doesn't want to have to deal with that anymore. So he figures if he can capture Carrot Top, he's made the world a safer place. And, Pencil Neck has already been captured, and all the other, real dangers have been handled. So he feels like he has unfinished business. Now, at the same time, Carrot Top is having his own personal struggles. He goes back home to his father, Don Parsnip Top, who is the leader of the most powerful of the 5 crime families in Stark City. And you can kind of see where Carrot Top gets his personality. The way he treats Pickle Puss is sort of the way Parsnip Top treats Carrot Top. But Carrot Top left the fold because he felt it too narrow of a goal to just sort of be the head of a crime family. He didn't want to be the heir to the throne. He wanted to take over the world And that ambition was too much to just be the second in command waiting to take over for Stark City's top crime family. So that's why he struck out on his own. And now he's coming back, and he's kind of sheepishly asking for help because he needs to get away from Bullets Bourbon, and he wants some kind of guidance on how to deal with Bullets Bourbon, because Bullets, of course, is obsessed with him and he's unrelenting in his pursuit of him. Now, you add to all that the beautiful and devious Veronica Sinclair, who is the beautiful blonde in the cover art here next to Bullets, handcuffed to him, which again is that metaphorical. I kind of felt that was metaphorical. Like, when I look back at this issue, I'm really surprised how much of it was metaphorical. I just give all credit to the Holy Spirit, because I really didn't see this while I was creating it. I don't really take any credit for that. But he becomes sort of saddled with Veronica, who is a bad influence on him. Now, Veronica is a complex character on her own right, because she is sort of in a bad situation out of bad choices and just bad luck. She finds herself in the employ of Carrot Top. He, for all intents and purposes, owns her. And she has to do what he says, but at the same time, she's trying to play Bullets Bourbon, where she can get Bullets Bourbon to capture Carrot Top so she can be free of him. She's playing a very dangerous game of both sides, and you're never really quite sure whose side she really wants to be on. Now, Bullets, again, of course, his moral character is weakening at this point, and it's a very bad time for him to be dealing with Veronica. And Veronica, of course, pledges to her master Carrot Top that she's going to be able to win him to the dark side, and that he'll finally join Carrot Top, and that'll be everything that he wanted. Then he won't have to worry about trying to destroy Bullets Bourbon. So again, it's a very, complex and deep story. I think it's sort of the deepest I've ever gotten with a story, and it's, very satisfactory to me, at least. And of course, as we've seen in the two commercials there, the two trailers I did, Bullets is sort of swayed in the second issue, which is called Temptation Eyes. And he sort of turns his back on his two compatriots, Joe and Chubby, who are sort of like, they're like the Abbott and Costello, the Laurel and Hardy of the book. I wanted to have a comedy team like the old days that would sort of handle that kind of slapstick affair. But he kind of ostracizes them. You know what I mean? He estranges himself from them by treating them pretty poorly. And, he winds up with Veronica, whom he even admits to himself he doesn't trust and he doesn't particularly like. But he's drawn to her, and he really wants it to work. And again, he's, struggling in himself to do the right thing, which is what he wanted to do all along. Now, in the last chapter, which, as I say, we didn't have the heart to call it the death of Bullets Bourbon, but it's called In the Final Hours, where it's the climactic clash where Bullets takes on Carrot Top for what may be the last time. And as you've seen in that trailer there, does Bullets die? Well, since there's a 10th issue, I guess the answer is no. But you'll have to pick up the issue to find out exactly how Bullets manages that. Of course, I also have to mention that the MacGuffin, so to speak, as you see on the cover, the jewel-encrusted carrot, which is called the 10,000 carat carrot, that's something that Carrot Top wants to steal for his father, Don Parsnip Top, in order to sort of gain his approval. And again, that's deeper than we've ever seen Carrot Top go. He's a very selfish and, ill-tempered person. But to see him try to do something on behalf of his father, it's taking him in a different direction too. And again, I don't really take much credit for this. This is just the way it turned out, because again, we really see Bullets' death, burial, and resurrection in this. And he comes out of it all the stronger and more pure. And so there is a religious message to this one. And again, that was something that I was conscious of doing, but I feel like it came out better than I really anticipated it coming. Because, you just let go and you let God. And I think when you're trying to write something with a religious text or subtext, you have to make sure it comes across organically. I think that's what the folly of a lot of writers are that are trying to do religious stuff, is they want to force the message in and make it like center stage. You have to let it come in gradually and naturally, and I think that's where this was successful to me, as well as a religious message being imparted. So again, this was a great issue, and we didn't make a trade of this one yet. So if you want to pick this one up, you got to get all 3 issues. You've got to get the Family Jewels, which is the name of the whole arc. You've got to get Temptation Eyes, and you've got to get In the Final Hours. So check that out in the link in the description below. And again, it's really a seminal moment in the Bullets Bourbon saga that I was quite proud of. All right, and so finally, we are going to leave you with our most recent issue, which as well I'm very proud of. And we'll try to show you a couple of pages of it. This, of course, is issue 10, Get the Lead Out. 10 Big Years of Bullets Bourbon Comics, 2012 to 2022. This is Act 1 of our most recent story arc called Man of Our Times. Now, when we left off with Pencil Neck, his powers have been removed, so to speak. Dr. Stewart, who was one of Bullet's confidants, gave him a special formula that would nullify Pencil Neck's eraser powers if he could but spray the substance on his head. In this case, it was a chemical overdose, and Bullets, by necessity, spilled the whole portion on his head, the whole concoction, turning his eraser yellow and making his powers completely void. Now, this made Pencil Neck, completely withdrawn. And he is mentally not at the place where he is supposed to be. He is not as wacky and crazy because he doesn't have the assurance of himself. What made him so wacky and crazy is that he knew he could take care of himself in any situation. Now he's helpless. And he's got these 2 roughneck bodyguards to take care of him. And we introduce another character called Iggy Duke, who is the crack investigative reporter in Stark City. And he's the one you see at the left there with the microphone. And he is sort of, he was sort of intended as being he's a cross between Joe Klein on The Flash and sort of the Leo Gorcey-esque 1930s film reporter, where he's sort of slightly sarcastic and abrasive, I guess, with his interviews and so forth. But he's still sort of the top man bringing the stories home on the news in Stark City. So he was a fun character, and we're going to see more of him as the story arc plays out. But here he's just doing some investigative journalism and trying to break the story here where Pencil Neck is released from the asylum wing of Lockmore Prison. Bullets is not particularly pleased with that news. And again, this story reintroduces Desiree Miller. I left Desiree in such a way in When the Night Comes that I thought that could be a good place to just leave her. But then I felt like I had more to say with that character, even though we sort of did the wrap up already with the Family Jewels, where it's like the fallout of his getting over Desiree. I felt there was more to be said with that storyline. And so we go back to Desiree and, again, I don't want to get too far ahead of the story because we've got more to tell. This is only the first issue, and it's going to be a 3-issue arc. But Desiree does play a pretty prominent role here. Of course, this is going to be Pencil Neck's revenge. He's going to try to get revenge on Bullets Bourbon for taking his power away from him. Now, how is he going to do that? Again, let's take a look at a couple of the frames from the issue. A couple of panels, I suppose I should say. But again, here, as I said, this is This is Desiree with her boyfriend, Rich Martin. And of course, this also causes no end of grief to Bullets Bourbon, where he is offering to protect her. But of course, this means now that he's got to be surrounded by her new beau, which again is not great for his constitution. You can see he's feeling quite ill. And again, Bullets doesn't take the news well of Pencil Neck's release. None of the guys do, but it's funny the way Chubby, he is sort of like a fanboy of Iggy Duke. And you get to see that as the story progresses a little bit, that he, he kind of is, he's kind of fanboying out about Iggy Duke. But Bullets and Joe kind of don't see it. They don't know why he's particularly enamored with this guy. And going back to what we were saying now, Pencil Neck finds his chance. He finds his chance in Dr. Chrome Dome, who is the crime doctor. And his boys, this is his group here. These are his flunkies. They point this out to him, that this guy known as Dr. Chrome Dome actually was in a lab accident. He's one of my few characters that wasn't born looking bizarre. He actually, it kind of reminds me a little bit, I guess, like of Destro, how he has the mask. And I think, like, I haven't kept up with the G.I. Joe that much, but the idea was that he's going to have that shiny head like Destro that the mask never comes off. And in some kind of lab accident, that metal adhered to his face, and he's like stuck with that cast iron jack-o'-lantern face. And that drove him insane, and he started performing, shall we say, bizarre experiments. And in this case, he would be the one person that Pencil Neck would be able to go to that would try to restore his erasing abilities. Now, of course, Pencil Neck, like I said, he's a shell of his former self here. He's terrified. He's kind of like, he's like locking himself in. He's not getting out there and being devious like he usually is, which is unusual for him. So he can't move on with his life until he has his powers restored. And so in this issue, we endeavor to show just exactly what that entails. The eraser sharpener is what the Mad Doctor here, Dr. Chrome Dome, creates in a way to get his eraser sharpened, so to speak, with its electronic blades, peeling away the layers of nullification over his eraser and restoring it to its former glory. Now, that's the plan. Is it successful? You'll have to read the issue, of course, but there you have it. Again, I don't have a lot to say about this issue because I don't want to give it all away, but you guys deserve a taste. You guys deserve a taster of what's going on. And this is going to be a real fun story because Pencil Neck, again, is one of my favorite characters. He's a real fun villain. He's mad as March hare. And if his powers are restored, there's a promise that the eraser, the eraser sharpener, would augment his brain and somehow make him even crazier because his eraser would be even more powerful. So again, this puts Bullets in a very dangerous position. His most dangerous enemy with those incredible powers is coming after his friends, coming after Desiree, and he's the only one that's going to be able to stand in his way of getting revenge. And of course, he is number one with a bullet on Pencil Neck's revenge parade. So again, 10 big years of Bullets Bourbon Comics. Really excited to share this with you guys on a lovely Thursday evening. Like I said before, if you have any comments or questions or anything at all pertaining to the Bullets Bourbon universe, leave them in the comments below. I'd be more than happy to read them on a subsequent broadcast. Again, I'm not sure how many broadcasts I've got left. The Christmas season is always a busy one in the Torch household. We have, of course, my sister's birthdays, both of them are in December. We also have New Year's. It's a very difficult time to find time to do videos, so I can't promise when the next one will be. We are going to probably try to get another one out before long, but if I don't see you till then, we will wish you a very Merry Christmas, a very Happy New Year, and again, just God bless you for being here. And if you watched this video, leave a like, leave a comment. I'd love to hear any of your questions or comments about the Bullets Bourbon saga. Taking a long time getting this next issue out because I'm having nothing but difficulty with it. I had to get a new computer and a new stylus to match that computer. A lot of work, it's taking time to get back on schedule. So I don't know when the next issue will be. I'm going to try to, show some new content if I can. I know I haven't shown anything really new lately, but I don't want to show too much of this issue. I like to leave some things for surprises. I know a lot of people sort of just want to put everything out there and then hope people will like it enough to buy one. I'm kind of on the other side where I like people to be more or less surprised. I mean, you might get an idea of what the story's about, but if you can just allow yourself to sort of get caught up in it, that's kind of what the writer's desire always is. Not just, well, here's the whole story and now will you please buy it and read it, That's my outlook anyway. So again, happy 10th birthday to Bullets Bourbon Comics. We've been here for 10 years, and we've only just begun. You ain't seen nothing yet. So, thank you for joining us. Until next we meet, this is Johnny Torch reminding you once again, keep the flame burning brightly, and I'll be with you again real soon.